Well, just to finish one of all these nice stories from my experience in Maldives, we wanted to reduce the emissions to zero, but we didn't make it. But then, because we had this problem with the transport sector, for example, the boats, which use a lot of diesel, and I couldn't find any boat expert who could tell me how they could modify all these old transport boats in a better way and what the cost was. So we didn't do anything. What we did instead was that we put in some biofuel. We put some, was it 15% biodiesel into the diesel, or maybe 10% ethanol into the gasoline. But when you do that in the Maldives, they only have one. I said they had islands for everything. They have also a tank island where they have all the oil in tanks, and there are limited tanking opportunities. So if you change some diesel to with biodiesel, it must be for everybody. So we also put in some biodiesel for the power plants which were run by diesel. And then we have to calculate the cost of this biodiesel, and we use some international values. And then the government have this, well, they could, if they wanted to go lower in emission, they could buy more biodiesel, or they could buy carbon credits. We talked about it. Why shouldn't Maldives, and if they're so eager to go to zero carbon, they could just buy 1 million carbon credits from the new mechanism, because they can't do it so easily for CDM. Because the only ones who can buy credits from CDM is Denmark or other developed countries. So you could buy from new market mechanisms, which are going to be established, I hope, in the Paris Agreement. We don't know, because they're not talking so much about it. The Japanese are running around, maybe contacting some of your countries about joint crediting mechanisms. They've been, they've been there. What kind of product did they want to make with you?
I think you're also looking at waste and renewable energy projects in the Philippines. Yeah.
I was in Chile. They were over there doing it. And what I could see they were doing, they took a PDD from CDM. They deleted everything about additionality and about sustainability, and then they put in a line that you should buy the equipment from Japan, and then you are fine. But in the future carbon market, you will also have FVA. Have you heard about FVA? Framework of various approaches. That means if you transfer credit from one system to another, there should be some rules about how you transfer, how the rules are, and if your system are accepted by UNFCCC. Maybe they never accept the Japanese system, we don't know. But something will pop up. At the moment, you can buy carbon credits from CDM because there are something called voluntary. You can go to a person who has a CDM product and say, "Can I buy some of your credits?" And you can do that. But let's just to get started with the GACMO model a little. Its name is something for greenhouse gas costing model. And the idea in it is that it is a simple tool. You don't have much time. It should be simple. And what we do in it, we take a start year balance. And then we project it until 2020, 25, or 30. There are sheets for each year if you want to do it. And a person asked me before, well, what should we do? He could see that developed countries normally reduced emissions compared to 1990, but developing countries normally reduce compared to business as usual for 2030. So you need somehow to project your emissions until that year you're looking at. And then what we do in GACMO is we find some factors you can multiply the energy consumption in the start year with to go to the future. And then at the end, it'll calculate a cost curve, a mitigation cost curve. So what you do first is you have a balance for the start year. It could be 2010, for example. Here is just an example. You have for each of these years, the start year and 20, 25, and 30, you have a sheet in the Excel model for each year. The top on the sheet is in fuel, million ton of diesel, million ton of gasoline, million cubic meter of gas, natural gas. And then the middle one, you convert it with standard IPCC factors to energy unit, like a kiloton oil equivalent. And then at the bottom, you calculate again with IPCC values to emissions of CO2. And then you have all the standard IEA factors for industry, transport, for road, for transport rail, transport air, of course only domestic air. Nobody takes care of the international air emissions. And then you have boats, navigation, then you have household, service, and agriculture, fishery or something. Then, I mean, we will look later. You have also added the other emissions of methane and nitrous oxide on the start year. So here we have for each of the electricity consumption or the energy consumption, you put in a factor, an annual growth rate from the start year. If it's 2010, the model calculates from 2010. And if you, for example, have 6% per year here, and so on, then it'll calculate the factor you have to multiply with and the last column. And then you get an energy and CO2 balance for the year you want to look at. Here is, for example, 2020. Just a second. We'll come back to looking more detailed in these tables. Now, this is the first part of GACMO. You make a projection until 2030, for example. And how to find these growth factors are not easy. I can show you an example later on for how we try to do it for Namibia. I got some energy statistics from Namibia for the last 10 years. And you could see the electricity consumption in this mining sector for every year. And then I could calculate the average annual growth rate for this mining sector. And then we could assume that this growth rate would continue. But now you are coming into politics, maybe the mining people saying, well, no, we have fantastic possibility, it'll grow faster. The environmentalists will say, no, it's very polluting industry, it will be slower. So you will have a political fight about it. But if you, let's say now, you have found out how to increase the emission until your target year, then you want to reduce emissions. Now, the problem is, as we discussed a little on the lunch, what is the difference between business as usual and mitigation? What is included into business as usual? I can give an example. For example, I did these calculations for Denmark many years, and we have a plan in Denmark to double the forest area. Should I then include this sink into business as usual until 2050? No, because the only forests which were put up was when there were money for it. And that was in the financial law for this year. I could see there was so much money to grow forest. Okay, then I know it will happen. Then I put it into the baseline. The rest is outside. That's mitigation. So what you should do, I think, is to include in the business as usual all activities which have been decided in your parliament or by your president or whoever have the power, and where you are sure it will be enforced. All the rest is mitigation. Does that sound sensible? But it's not easy. Now let's say that in the Maldives, we wanted to put up some, one option was to put a lot of solar PVs into the system. And then GACMO contain a sheet for each type of mitigation option. There one sheet for solar. If you go to the sheet for solar, you will find a calculation sheet for solar PV, calculations for concentrating solar power, one for concentrating solar power with storage, one for solar cookers, one for solar water heating, and so on. This is just one example here. This is for a 1 kilowatt grid-connected PV in the Greater Malé region, where they were using diesel before. Then you have, I have a pointer, I think. Let's see if it works. No. How do I use this?
This doesn't work. Can I will set an I think that will be faster.
No, I want to push.
Pointer.
Just pointer. No.
Yeah, this one has to be pressed. Yeah.
It works?
Can you see?
No. Doesn't matter. I'll do without. On the left here, on the top left, you have the economy. And in the economy, you need two columns, one for your baseline, the middle column, and the other one for your mitigation option. Which one do we press?
Just
this one?
middle. Yep.
Where is it? Ah, it's so... can you see it? No, I can't. But at least we have here some data for the mitigation options for the left, and the middle was the baseline. And now the middle, the baseline was diesel. So here we have calculated that we have to pay $453 per year for fuel. And where does that come from? It's coming from over here. You have all the inputs. You have general input, you have mitigation option input for solar PV, and you have you have the diesel input. And it has to be so transparent so everybody can understand how you ended up with that. The final answer was $133 every ton reduction at not any cost, but that you gain money every time you save 1 ton of CO2. So we need to know how much fuel were used. It was diesel, and we over here we have the cost of the diesel, and then we also know the amount of electricity which will be produced, because we have 1 megawatt and the capacity factor is 1,825 full-time hours with an efficiency factor. That means you get 1,460 kilowatt hour per year, and with that efficiency, you have an emission here, up here, 0.72 ton per megawatt hour is what you emit every time the diesel is running to produce 1 kilowatt hour. Then we can, then we have these $453. And of course, if it's in a country where you have more hydro in the system, you will have lower emission issuance for the diesel. Now, for the mitigation option, we have to put in what is the cost of PVs. Now, this is an old table. In these days, the price was $3,000 per kilowatt. Nobody would pay that any time more. What would you pay, Fauci? 1,000? 1,500? 1,000? And now we are talking about the full installation on the roof, yeah? You would pay 1,000 when you construct your new house in Morocco? The maximum. So look, yeah?
I have experience, personal experience. Actuellement, le prix de l'installation varie entre 2 800 à 1 400 $ en moyenne. Avec les nouvelles intrusions de chinoiseries contrôlées techniquement, ça peut aller jusqu'à minimum, c'est $1 400 pour 6 kWh de capacité.
So in Mauritania, you have to pay more than 1,400. I think you should go to Morocco to buy it. No?
Le marché de la Mauritanie est libéralisé à 100% et sans impôt sur les nouvelles technologies.
But do you have taxes in Morocco, Fauci? Do you have taxes when you pay 1,000? Yeah, subsidy. Okay. So maybe when you calculate for this option in Mauritania, you would put in 1,500 here per kilowatt. And you can see some of these fields are yellow. That means that's where you can come with inputs. And then you also have an annual operation maintenance, let's say 1% of the investment cost. So we add some money here for annual operation. That means the annual costs are 313 compared with a higher price for diesel, 453, so you're saving $139. And that was with the high price, so if we put it down to 1,500, you save even more. And again, here you have to calculate the no emissions from the solar one. There are 1.1 ton for the emissions from the diesel. But also here, when you can try to calculate electricity generation cost was $21 per kilowatt hour. That was already cheaper than what they paid in the outer island, in the islands in the Maldives. And now it'll be even more cheap. So why doesn't everybody install solar PVs? You're gaining money. The interesting thing is that when you look at most of these standard mitigation options, you are gaining. And the reason is, of course, that you have to get the investment cost up front, and that can be difficult. Because here we are levelizing the cost over 20 years. So and then also we are using a discount rate here of 7%. So you should be, to do this, should be able to go to a bank and get a loan over 20 years with 7% payment per year. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe you have a higher interest. I don't know how it is in your countries. In Denmark now I can get it for 2%. But we have sheets for these kind of sheets for all different mitigation options. This is just a description of what we were doing. The problem is that you need you need a lot of data. And it can be difficult to get these data. You can't do it without having access to people who know their countries very well. When we were talking about when one of these options, biofuel, when I was down in Zambia, where we were trying to do some CDM project, also using the GACMO model and so on, we were trying to look at an option was to produce biofuel. You know Jatropha? You know this nice, fast-growing plant where you have the seeds you can pick, you press them, and you get biodiesel. And there was CDM methodologies how to include this. You're smiling. Maybe you have a good story. We tried to build a project in Zambia for the copper mines. You see, they have a nice fleet of trucks. And the idea was that they should change from diesel to biodiesel, produced from Jatropha. And this initiative guy down there, he had organized, I think, 20,000 small farms in Zambia to produce Jatropha. It was mostly run by women who had a farm, maybe 2 hectares, and they planted these Jatropha trees, and after 3 years they could pick the seeds and he would buy them. But the problem was he never managed to get the production equipment up and running where he should press the seeds and get the oil and sell it to the truck. I don't know. Have you any explanation why it didn't happen in Zambia? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can take this.
I think mainly it's a problem of investment costs that are involved.
The problem with CDM was that in order to get credit, you have to include the users into the boundary of the project. So you had to monitor who was using the biofuel to be sure to calculate the emission reduction by the use of the biofuel. And here, this is the list of possible options in GACMO. And we are using our experiments from CDM to organize all these emission reduction options. We have afforestation options and biomass energy. There are many different options. In cement, we have, for example, this option that you are coming and replacing some of the clinker. You know, you take some calcium oxide, you heat it up, and you have some calcium oxides, which are your lime, and then the CO2 go up in the air and create climate change. Then you reduce the amount of clinker and put some waste material in it instead. And then you have many, for example, landfill gas projects, and they can be of different kinds. They could be, we have one option where you are reducing the emission by flaring the methane from the landfill, or another option is that you collect the waste and produce electricity from it, or that a third option is you are composting the waste. It's interesting when you look at CDM, there are 7,500 registered projects, and only 2,500 of them have ever managed to get carbon credits. So that's a question I ask many people. What about the rest of the project? What about the last 5,000 projects? Why have they never asked for credit? And nobody knows. My idea is maybe they're dead. Maybe they never got investment. I was once in Bangladesh where we tried to set up CDM project, and I could see they had two registered projects. One was for a beautiful project. It was two guys who have started collect the waste from vegetable markets in the capital, and they had built a very nice composting facility where they made cheap compost for the farmers, and they got carbon credit for reducing emissions from the baseline, which was landfill. Now, I was out looking at this plant. It existed. Now I said, what about the other project? You have a landfill gas project. Where is it? Well, it doesn't exist. Okay, why not? Yeah, they couldn't agree who owned the waste, and they couldn't agree who should have had the carbon credits. So, but that's what often happens. You have to be sure who owns the right to get the credits. Is geothermal power. There are some countries which are very eager with geothermal power, for example in Kenya, where you have the Rift Valley and so on. Dominica, you have a lot of potential for geothermal, don't you? Can you put on the mic? I think there is a big opportunity to supply everything with geothermal energy in this.
The country needs about like 21 megawatts or something to feed the entire. We are a small population, 70,000 people, but with geothermal, we can reach up to about 120 megawatts. So the plan is to be able to export energy to the neighboring islands.
But is this a project you would include in your INDC?
Yes, but there are some barriers. There are some barriers because it's something that we already have started implementing. They have done all the feasibility studies. We have like a geothermal plant in my village, but there are some barriers with how private sector would be able to tap into that energy source, as well as like how it would actually benefit the island. You know, in terms of the population, if energy would cost less, because that's what most people thought, but it may not.
So it sounds like it's an obvious thing to include in an INDC, yes, because it's not in the baseline.
No, it's not.
No, it won't happen without some support from outside, no, or some extra activity. But on the other hand, you say you're not totally sure whether you can manage it yourself. It sounds like
they have. I don't know how to explain it. Chatham House rules. Whatever I say here will stay in here.
Yeah. Just wait. You agree? You don't tell anybody?
Yeah, I'm asking.
Okay. Thank you.
right? So there are plans and so on. There's like a team working on different deals and contracts and so on with different consortiums and different companies, different foundations, and so on, to be able to try to build this big plant, as well as the pipelines to go to the other countries, right? So like everything, is supposed to be done, but it's not very transparent. So we don't know exactly how we can put it in the INDC without the information that they have, being available to us and to the public. So that's why, though it would be like a very good thing to put in the INDC, right? We don't have, I don't know yet if I can put that out into the public,
But what you're telling me...
We can tell, but we will need, it can be like conditional.
Yes.
It can be conditional.
This is conditional.
But there are opportunities and talks and so on and discussions for financing already.
But I think
But we have to put it as
it's an
conditional.
obvious thing for you to put into the INDC, calculate the emission reduction in your country, tell a story about maybe it's a combined project by several islands, and tell what the barriers are and so on, what needs to be included. That would be nice. Thank you. Yeah, we there are many things we could look at, but let's wait a little. Are you ready again? I was happy to see that our friend from Mauritania already have done his calculation using the GACMO model, but maybe we can hear about it later, Fauzi. Here is some data from our calculation in the Maldives. And we had some interesting ones. The first one was LED tubes for public sector. I mean, nowadays you don't buy one LED here, one LED here. You go down to the shop and ask, no, I want 10 meter. And then you buy LED strips. You can put into you can buy something like this full of LEDs, and they're easy to interchange. And LEDs were used in Denmark for many reasons. If you go around in the city and you see a street light crossing, and then you see, wow, they have interchanged all the lamps in the street light, red and green and yellow, with LEDs. Why did they do it? Due to climate change? No. Due to economy? No. Yes, they did it due to economy because LED lasts so long, they never have to pay a guy to come out and replace the bulbs. So it's more sustainable. Now, this option was very cheap in the Maldives because you got about, was it 10,000 LED lamps free of charge from China? So there was no investment. It was a gift from China. So don't copy that one if you can't get it as a gift from China, yes? I mean, we have many discussions in Denmark when you buy solar PV, should you buy them for China or not? But I think you can get very good quality from China. You can also get very bad quality. You have to, as any other product, to look at what you are buying. And then the strange thing in Male is, I mean, there are many interesting things about Maldives. Everybody almost is living on Male, a small atoll in the middle, small island in the middle, 300,000, no, 150,000. Yeah, half the population living there, squeezed together. you don't even have space to buy a sewage plant. No, you can't put a sewage plant there, so they send all the sewage out in the sea. But the funny thing is that it would be perfect for biking around. It's flat. One end to another is 1.5 kilometers. And everybody has a two-wheeler. Running around. And they can't find a parking place for it. But there are more status in this machine than in a bike, because when you look at the bicycle they have, I think they must have been produced in China for 50 years ago or something. They don't look very good. And there's something about biking is status. I mean, if you go and see a young guy here who come proud with his new bicycle, show it to the young guys, and they say, wow, this is smart. Look at it, 21 gears. Look at the color. Wow. It's fashionable. And when I go to work out here, sometimes there's a guy in front of me. Look, who's that? Oh, that's the Minister of Finance. Oh, yeah, he's biking, of course. Yeah. So there was a CNN guy recently who came to Denmark to have a little 15 minutes about how we Copenhagenize Copenhagen. That means how we introduced all these bicycles. And he asked people in Nørrebrogade, we're making the bicycle lanes wider and wider, and the space for the cars narrower and narrower. Because when you see people coming with their children, they have a box in front with their children. It takes more space, so we need broader biking lanes. And then Copenhagen made this decision that it was free of charge to take your bikes with the trains. And that was a bit difficult because suddenly everybody put their bicycle in these trains. So now they had to double the space for the bicycles in the trains. Sorry. But this guy from CNN, he stopped people and asked them, why are you biking? Due to climate change? What? No. Due to environment? No. Why are you biking? It's more practical. I mean, so that's the reason. And we took it small steps by step, and suddenly you have changed the whole city. But I proposed people in Maldives to just have one street for bicycles, but I don't think they have agreed yet on it. No? Maybe in the future. Yeah, you can see that we also have this is the main sheet in GACMO. This is where we have a sheet for each of the mitigation options, and then the data are collected into this sheet. And you get the abatement cost for each of them, $1 per ton CO2. You can see this is sorted, so it gets more and more expensive. You have the biodiesel are the most expensive. You collect, we define a unit. For example, this sheet was for 1 kilowatt of solar. Then the only thing you put in this, this should be yellow. So you put here, for example, PVs for resort, 14,000 kilowatt. That's 40,000 megawatt. So the only thing you do to use GACMO is just to put in numbers for how many units you introduce in the system. Then it calculates the emission reduction, the investment, the annualized investment. And you can see for the diesel and the biodiesel, there was not an investment because they used the old tanks. But there was an annualized cost, which was positive. But what they liked is that that's pretty normal. When you add everything together, you save money every year. And here, when we did the first sheets you have your start year data and emissions. You have your target year data, could be 2020 or 30. So you could see we ended up with about 2,000 kiloton. That's 2 million ton of emissions per year instead of 1 in the base year. And then you could see when you add up all the reductions, you ended up with 702 kilowatt reduction. That's only 35% of the total. Then our imagination stopped. We couldn't invent more. We had put 4 megawatt waste plant on Tilafushi. We had put 20 megawatt wind. We had put even a new option with 10 megawatt from net metering. It's not yet started totally, is it?
Not yet started, but it has been gazetted, the regulation.
So it's decided.
Yep.
And the idea is that you get a new meter. You put some solar PV on your roof, and I would love that option. And then you get a meter. When the sun is shining, your meter starts to run backwards. So if I had one, I would take my chair up to my meter and in a sunny day and sit and look how much money I was gaining. We had it in Denmark also for a period, but the government had to stop it because it was getting too popular. Everybody was installing, so they changed the rules so you got less money, so it slowed down. But it's a very good option if you want to incentivize private owners to put up solar PVs. And then you have efficient air conditioning. That's something I don't understand. I mean, if you look at our buildings here in Denmark, I put in my house 20 centimeter of rock wool everywhere, and double glassing, triple glassing, energy efficient glassing. And so we do everything we can to keep the heat in the building. Now, when I go to the Maldives, I don't understand why they don't use the same technology to keep the heat out of the building. I mean, I understand them in the Maldives. They don't like to disappear in 30, 40, 50 years due to water rise. So they took a pump and went out to an island and put up 2 meters of sand on the corral so they could stay there a little longer. But the houses they built out there, they're not energy efficient. There's no insulation, there's no double glassing, and it's lousy. If you make calculations about energy efficiency, you know whatever you do, you're gaining money. But still, it's the same story. You need some upfront money. So I think what is important, maybe what you can learn from it, maybe it's a bit strange to say that you could do most of it without asking for funding. What you need is you need some guarantees. Some Danish agency give guarantees to investment in developing countries. If something goes wrong, you get your money. Or you need somebody to give you cheap loans. That's what you need. Also, I tried to calculate the investment in all the CDM projects because I could see what they had been doing. I think $400 billion has been invested in CDM projects. Where did this money come from? From us? No. From local banks. It was no transfer money, only when we bought the credits. So I think it's more a story about financial engineering, making good conditions for the loans and so on. When should we have breaks? Well,
3 o'clock.
on.
At 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. We have still time. That's good. Now, when you press a button, vous avez essayé de faire le? Have you tried to make a cost curve with GACMO? See, I changed it in the new version, which you can download from.
Dans notre évaluation d'atténuation de la troisième communication, nous avons le même graphique.
I'll explain. In the old days, we called it an abatement cost curve. And now, you see, all these were negative, meaning that you are gaining money. So I thought it was strange. So we mirrored it, turned it upside down. Now we call it an abatement revenue curve. It's more logical because you're making money. So you start making a big revenue, then you go down and you end up with these biodiesel and so on options where you have to pay money. And then we also succeeded, my students succeeded in putting a text on each of them so you could see which box it is. Here is only in color. Maybe while I find the next case, Mr. Sidat, could you don't want to present what you have been doing with GACMO in Mauritania. Could you explain a little what happened with GACMO in Mauritania? Was it in Mozambique you used it? No. In Mauritania, you used the model.
Nous ne l'avons pas utilisé pour les documents nationaux, mais nous avons utilisé autre modèle qui nous a permis de faire la courbe de réduction des coûts. Pour ce qui est du GACMO, je l'ai utilisé personnellement pour mes étudiants, pour l'évaluation des actions isolées, des actions au niveau des villes isolées pour l'installation des énergies renouvelables et la réduction de l'émission. Changement, par exemple, du diesel ou du fuel vers le gaz naturel.
So you use GACMO for a specific area, for a specific system. But you had some experience in Mozambique?
Sorry, we use gas now. But we hadn't used gas
now you're
so
talking
far.
about gas, natural
Gas.
Okay, let's see about that.
And now we use gas for big cities. We use gas in Maputo, Inhambane, Vilankulo. But for now, gas is for industry only, and the transport. We are now transforming the transport, using the higher emission fuels like diesels and petrol, and we are transforming these fuels for gas for vehicles. So that's why we are fighting. We are struggling to improve these fuels for more people, because the transformation of the cars is very costly now. So now we using to subsidiary people to pay for this transformation, because now we are paying for transformation under 32,000 Mitica.
Okay.
So it's expensive for most of people, and now people are subsidiaried to use gas.
because the emission factor for gas, we can see, if you look now, I have taken the example of GACMO as it looks when you downloaded it and show how we used it beginning to use it for Namibia. When you download it, there's a lot of sheets at the bottom. The first one is called guidance. And here it's a guidance written the 23rd of June telling you how to use it. And then we have some assumptions here. And here you can see the yellow one are inputs. This is the emission factor for natural gas according to IPCC default values is 56 kilogram CO2 per gigajoule. Now, before the cars used gasoline or diesel?
Before gas, we use gasoline.
Yeah.
Yes,
and you
petrol
can
and
see
diesel.
for gasoline it's 69.3 and for diesel it's 74.1. And the difference is, of course, you see coal is almost 194, hydrogen is 0. So the more hydrogen in your fuel, the lower the emission factor. And natural gas is CH4, the more hydrogen, so that's why you go down in emission from natural gas. So when you use GACMO, we assume that you take this emission factor. Maybe you have different ones. You can introduce them. For Namibia, then also up here, you need some other assumption. For example, for gasoline here, you need some, now we are going down in detail, that's where the interesting stuff is. I could see I didn't get the same amount of emissions as you did, and I found out that you use another amount of gigajoule per ton of gasoline than IPCC, so you put them in there. And the same, the density for how many ton per 1,000 liter gasoline, you can change them. And of course, then you also have a very difficult question. What about the price? I don't like to talk about it. Well, in this calculation, we assume $60 per barrel. If we did it a couple of years ago, it would be 120 maybe. Or what is it now, 65 or something? In the old days, we had a projection, but I think I keep it stable around 60 in the calculation, because what we have learned is that if it gets much higher, people start fracking, like in the US, and the cost of fracking companies go bankrupt if the price is $60. But if it go much more about $60, they start fracking. So I think it stabilize the price. And then we have to calculate the price of gasoline, US dollar per liter, and diesel oil. And according to scientific literature and history, there is a fixed relation between a liter of diesel and a liter of crude oil. So heavy fuel oil is 0.8 is cheaper, diesel oil is more expensive, jet fuel is even more expensive. So using these historic relations, we have a cost of a liter of the different fuels. If you disagree, put in your own number. There are other things which are a bit complex. That's these numbers here. Now, if I'm in Zambia, sir, you are fantastic in Zambia. You are running the whole system based on hydro almost. So if I put in 1 kilowatt of hydro in Zambia, I get no emission reductions. No. That's sad. Now, if I do it in Bhutan, we have the same problem. But in CDM, those guys in Bhutan, they can make a big hydropower plant and sell electricity to India and get the reduction from India, which are a lot of coal, very high. But what we have done is, I don't know how the system could work, but we have made calculation based of the whole SADC area, including Namibia, South Africa, and everybody. So in CDM project, you can use the same emission factor in all the countries. I don't know, would you do that in your INDC? Or, I mean, we have another interesting problem in Namibia, because if we go and look into the start year balance here, I said before, in the top, very few numbers here. There's some diesel here, million ton. There's some diesel for road transport and other things. Nothing for domestic air, a little gasoline on the roads, something for household. And then you add them up. And then also, very important, we need data for electricity for GACMO. You should tell us the electricity consumption. I got it from your data sheets. Sometimes you can find it. These numbers, some of them I found in the national communication from Namibia. But I wanted the fuel consumption and the electricity, and they didn't put it into the national communication, only greenhouse gas emissions. So I sent a mail to Jørgen, see, can I have the background document? Because they needed this information to calculate emission, and he kindly sent me the background document. So I had the numbers. But there I could also see there was a lot of electricity consumption in mining. Okay, I put in the number. There was some electricity in other industries. We didn't split them, just put them together, miscellaneous industry. There was some electricity consumption in household, something in services, and something in agriculture and fishery. If you add them up, it was 3,332 gigawatt hours, about 3 terawatt hours. So, how was it produced? Yeah. We could see that 1.6% was produced by coal, 65% was imported, mostly from South Africa, and the rest was hydro. Now, when we go to the future year here, what the model, what GACMO is doing, it will use exactly the same share of production in the future. It will multiply the emissions, the energy use in mining. It'll multiply it by the growth factors we found for electricity consumption in industry. Based on this 10-year table, we could see there was an average growth in 6.4% per year in mining. Well, then I just, by my own, I said, well, it can't go on forever. It might be a little lower from 20 to 25 and a little lower from 25 to 30. Don't believe me, you have to put in the right numbers. But that means in total, the number electricity consumption in the start year should be multiplied and added 189% to get to 2030. Okay, then we get these numbers here. but it will assume the same fraction is imported. So it has even built more hydro because it assumed the same fraction of hydro. If you want to be more precise in the baseline, you can put in what you think it will be. Now the problem in South Africa, I also discussed it in our last meeting in May with the people from Lesotho. They don't believe it will continue because the thing they get from South Africa now is not power, it is power cuts. And that's not so good. So I said to the people in Swaziland, maybe the baseline for you in 2030 is that you produce your own electricity on diesel or coal or something. What do you think, Reagan? What is your baseline? What do you, if you put on your microphone?
I think the baseline we're using at the moment is the planned electricity generation projects under the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Like, for example, for Namibia, we have this Kudu gas power station, which is coming up, and then we have another hydropower station, a big one, which the country is there are concrete programs which will come up soon, given the power cuts we are receiving.
Now, this is interesting because I put in a mitigation option here. There was something here on energy efficiency in supply side. There is an option here that you can put in a new natural gas power plant. I put in 800 megawatt. That's what the Kudu plant is. So what I have done, I have looked at it as a mitigation option. Now, maybe that's not right. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You say you have a baseline increasing so much, and then you reduce by putting in 800 megawatt gas. It looks nice. You do reduction. If you instead put your 800 megawatt gas into the baseline, you would have a lower increase and no reduction. You will end exactly the same place. But it don't look so nice in an INDC. I don't know. It depends what you will say about this Kudu plant. Is it really something you're sure which will happen? The money there will be enforced? Yeah. I think we should put it into the baseline instead. Okay, that's interesting.
Previously, we did an investment and financial flows in the energy sector. We used all this concrete planned budgeted for projects like the Kudu gas. We used them as a baseline there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't do it correct.